Imagine living next to a neighbor that everyone finds strange, but you never could have imagined that he was hiding such a terrifying secret until the day reality surpassed your worst nightmares. This is the true story of Lauren Giddings, a young woman with a bright future ahead of her, whose life was brutally shattered by someone she thought was just a neighbor. Get ready to discover the chilling details of a case that shocked an entire town. Lauren Giddings was a young woman full of life and ambition. A law student, she had just started a new chapter in her life by moving into a comfortable apartment in a quiet residential complex. For her, it was an exciting time, full of hope and dreams for the future. But very quickly, she noticed something strange about her next-door neighbor, Stephen McDaniel. Stephen was different. He avoided all contact with the other residents. He constantly kept his windows and curtains closed, refusing to let in daylight or the curiosity of the neighborhood. His discretion was not that of a mere loner. It was as if he wanted to hide from the world. Lauren, who was naturally kind and outgoing, tried several times to reach out to him. When they passed each other in the hallways, she smiled at him and tried to start a conversation. But Stephen often responded with silence or short sentences, sometimes even with cold or suspicious looks. He never engaged in a real conversation. This behavior worried Lauren a little, as well as the other neighbors. Despite everything, she decides to go further in her friendly approach. She introduces Stephen to her mother, Karen, during a visit to her home. Karen remembers also finding Stephen strange, but she notes that he seemed withdrawn, almost lost in his thoughts. This meeting only deepens the mystery surrounding this man. Lauren begins to notice that Stephen almost never leaves his apartment. He doesn't take part in the complex's events, doesn't socialize. He seemed almost locked in his own bubble. Sometimes she would catch glimpses of him moving quickly, alone, as if he were running away from something or someone. But despite her efforts to remain friendly, Lauren felt that Stephen often watched her with a look that made her uncomfortable. She doesn't know why, but something about his presence deeply unsettles her. This feeling grows over time. As the months go by, their relationship deteriorates. Lauren notes in an email to a friend that Stephen sometimes gives her dark looks and makes unpleasant remarks. Sometimes he seems to follow her with his eyes as if he were plotting something sinister. This unsettling neighborly relationship eventually creates a constant tension in Lauren's mind. She realizes that despite her kindness, Stephen is someone she needs to avoid. Yet evil is already brewing behind his closed doors, in the shadows of a man who hides much more than just social awkwardness. This oppressive atmosphere is the prelude to a tragedy that none of them could have imagined. One summer morning in 2011, the calm of the neighborhood is suddenly shattered by a discovery that will shock the entire community. Part of Lauren Giddings' body is found in a trash bin, within the very grounds of the residential complex where she lived. It is a complete shock. How could such an act of violence have happened in a place that seemed so peaceful? The police are quickly alerted and begin a thorough investigation. Very quickly, the investigators realize that this crime is far more sordid and complex than they had imagined. Lauren's body had been cut up, mutilated, as if someone wanted to erase every trace of who she had been. The brutality of the scene deeply unsettles those who respond. The forensic police team search the area for evidence. Every detail matters. In the building's maintenance room, they discover an object that will turn the investigation upside down, a blood-stained hacksaw. This saw matches exactly the kind that could have been used to dismember Lauren. The discovery is chilling. The fact that this tool was hidden in a space used by residents raises many questions. The surveillance cameras are carefully reviewed. They show that this saw was purchased by one person only, Stephen McDaniel, the mysterious neighbor Lauren had tried to avoid. This immediately makes him a prime suspect. Yet for many, it's hard to accept that this man, who even worked at the prosecutor's office at one point, could be connected to such a horrific crime. But the evidence keeps piling up. Items belonging to Lauren are found in Stephen's apartment, along with things from her daily life, stained with blood. Everything seems to indicate that Stephen not only committed this crime, but also tried to cover up his actions with a chilling coldness. The community is in shock. How could such a bright young woman with so much promise become the victim of a neighbor who, to everyone, just seemed a little odd, a little isolated? But beyond the sadness, there is also a growing sense of unease. What is Stephen McDaniel really hiding? Why would he have done this? The police begin to take a closer look at his past and his behavior. Very quickly, they uncover disturbing aspects. Forums where he shares dark thoughts, searches about violent acts, troubling obsessions. Everything seems to point toward a terrible truth. This gruesome discovery marks a turning point in the case. This is no longer just a simple disappearance or an accident. It is a premeditated, cold, and calculated act. And behind this crime, a man who seemed to be hiding a monster within himself. To understand the horror of what happened, we need to delve into the life of the man responsible. Stephen McDaniel. Who was he really? Behind this strange neighbor was a complex, disturbing, and above all, deeply troubled personality. Stephen was not a stranger in the neighborhood. He had grown up in this town, and at first glance, seemed to be an ordinary person. Yet, those who knew him at school or university tell a different story. Stephen was often described as someone isolated, difficult to approach. His classmates found him odd, awkward in social interactions, almost uncomfortable to be around. He often asked strange questions, especially about death, violence, or even apocalyptic scenarios. At the law school where he studied, Stephen stood out not for his social skills, but for his peculiar behavior. Always ready to argue, even when he was wrong, he seemed convinced he was the smartest person in the room. He came across as arrogant and often got into arguments with his classmates, including Lauren Giddings. Their relationship was tense, marked by frequent disagreements. Lauren, who was known for being kind and sociable, didn't try to get closer to him, but she sometimes tried to support him, especially after they moved into the same building. Despite everything, Stephen remained a loner. He didn't take part in social activities and didn't seem to have any real friends. His professors described him as an average student, not particularly outstanding, but with a recognizable voice that was sometimes hard to ignore. As his studies were coming to an end, he found himself without any real direction, with no concrete plans for his future. This emptiness, this lack of social connection, seems to have fueled his dark obsessions. Investigators discovered that he spent a lot of time on the internet, visiting forums where he shared macabre, sometimes violent ideas. He searched for information about death, torture, and seemed fascinated by the idea of committing the perfect crime. This obsession wasn't just virtual. It manifested in his actions, as the investigation later revealed. Stephen was also described as someone who controlled everything around him, even in unhealthy ways. He always kept his windows closed and his shutters drawn, refusing to let in light or the gaze of others. This behavior heightened suspicion and discomfort among his neighbors. Lauren, despite her instincts, tried to reach out to him, even introducing Stephen to her mother. But the truth is, she felt uncomfortable around him, and the tensions between them eventually worsened. She even mentioned in an email to a friend that Stephen would give her threatening looks, as if he wanted to hurt her. In short, Stephen McDaniel was far from just an eccentric neighbor. Behind his reserved appearance and seemingly ordinary student background, there was a troubled personality, plagued by dark thoughts and a dangerous potential. What initially seemed like mere oddity quickly revealed a much deeper threat. After the gruesome discovery, the investigation quickly took a crucial turn. The police, faced with the brutality of the crime, realized that every minute counted in finding clues and understanding what had really happened. From the very beginning, suspicion quickly turned toward Stephen McDaniel. His strange behavior and his connection to the victim caught the investigators' attention. But it wasn't just his attitude that was problematic. Physical evidence began to pile up around him, making the situation increasingly alarming. One of the key elements of the investigation was the discovery of a tool in a shared room of the building, a hacksaw, a metal saw, covered in blood. This saw matched exactly the one found in the package of human remains belonging to Lauren. Even more troubling, surveillance cameras confirmed that it was Stephen who had purchased this tool, directly linking the murder weapon to him. But that wasn't all. The building's maintenance staff, who had access to this room, were questioned, as well as others who had a key. Stephen was the only one who possessed a key to this room, thereby eliminating the other possibilities. All these pieces of the puzzle gradually came together, painting an increasingly grim picture. The investigators also thoroughly examined Stephen's electronic devices. There, the revelations were chilling. They discovered that Stephen spent a great deal of time searching for violent and disturbing content online, including videos and forums where he shared his dark thoughts about torture and murder. Even worse, he had searched Lauren's name numerous times, as if he had been watching her for a long time. One of the most disturbing discoveries was a video recorded with a camera attached to a long stick. This video showed Stephen spying on Lauren through her shutters on the very night of the murder. It was clear evidence that he was watching her, that he was planning what he was going to do. This video evidence hit the investigators hard and significantly strengthened the case against him. As the evidence piled up, the charges against Stephen became more serious. Not only was he the main suspect in the murder, but the police also found evidence of extremely serious charges related to child sexual exploitation, bringing the total charges far beyond simple homicide. The police then took Stephen into custody, and despite his initial denials, the weight of the evidence seemed to overwhelm him. His attitude, his attempt to deny the facts, and the numerous pieces of evidence against him made his defense very weak. In summary, the investigation accelerated at an impressive speed. What started as mere suspicions became a solid case, supported by physical evidence, videos, testimonies, and above all, Stephen McDaniel's increasingly incriminating behavior. The noose was tightening, and all that remained was to see how Stephen would respond to this avalanche of evidence against him. After months of investigation, the decisive moment finally arrived. Stephen McDaniel, who until then had remained silent and in denial, confessed. This confession would upend everything that was known and plunge even deeper into the horror of the crime. In a silent courtroom, Stephen delivered a chilling account, devoid of any apparent emotion. He described with disturbing precision the moments that led to Lauren Giddings' death. According to his account, on that fateful night, he used a master key to enter Lauren's apartment at 4:30 in the morning. He explained that he was wearing a mask, gloves, and black clothing so as not to be recognized. He stood for a while watching her sleep, but Lauren suddenly woke up. Gripped by panic or perhaps a dark resolve, Stephen confessed to attacking Lauren by strangling her. He recounted that she fought back with all her strength, crying out his name in a final plea for reason, before finally losing consciousness and dying at his hand. This part, difficult to hear, depicts a cold and relentless violence, a life-and-death struggle in a heavy silence. After the murder, Stephen claimed to have moved the body into the bathroom, leaving it in the bathtub all night. But this was only the beginning of his macabre plan. The following evening, he returned with tools, including the infamous hacksaw, and began dismembering Lauren's body, an appalling act he described with terrifying coldness. He methodically cut up the limbs, placing the pieces in bags that he then scattered in various trash bins around the university campus. He left the torso, the central part of the body, in a garbage bin near the building where he lived. To erase any trace of himself, he threw his gloves, mask, and even his blood-stained clothes into the toilet, destroying them that way. This chilling account revealed not only the horror of his actions, but also the level of preparation and premeditation behind the murder. Despite all this, Stephen claimed he did not remember attacking Lauren, asserting that she had died of an overdose and that his role was limited to a grim form of assistance. He denied any murderous intent, which left the prosecutors and the audience perplexed by this desperate attempt to minimize his responsibility. In his confession, he also stated that he had been in a state of mental confusion, convinced for a time that Lauren was still alive. He mentioned a possible psychological or neurological explanation, suggesting that a personal disorder had driven him to commit this heinous crime. Despite his words, the coldness of his actions and the clear premeditation made this explanation hard to accept. For Lauren's family, this confession brought a mix of relief and horror. The truth, however terrible, had finally been revealed, putting an end to months of anguish and uncertainty. But the pain of this loss remained immense, intensified by the barbarity of the acts. Lauren's mother, Karen Giddings, spoke out publicly, denouncing the darkness that had overtaken Stephen, a man she considered lost forever. She expressed her hope that such a tragedy would never happen again and called for justice for her daughter. Stephen McDaniel's chilling confession marked a turning point in the case, confirming not only his role in the murder, but also revealing the coldness and cruelty behind the act. This moment will remain forever etched in memory, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can dwell within some souls. After Stephen McDaniel's chilling confession, the case took an official turn with the opening of the trial. It was a stage fraught with tension, where every detail would be meticulously examined and every word weighed to determine this man's fate. The trial attracted a great deal of attention, both from the media and the local community, shocked by the magnitude of the tragedy and the complex personality of the accused. From the very beginning, the atmosphere in the courtroom was electric, mixing hope for justice with painful memories. The prosecutor presented a solid case supported by numerous pieces of physical evidence. The items found at the crime scene, the surveillance videos, Stephen's internet searches related to sordid content, and of course, his own detailed confession. Everything pointed to premeditation and the cruelty of the murder. However, the defense tried to challenge certain elements, highlighting the absence of direct evidence such as Stephen's DNA on the hacksaw or in the bathroom, and sought to introduce doubt in the minds of the jurors. Stephen's lawyer argued that some of the evidence had been obtained in questionable ways and pointed out flaws in the investigation. But despite these attempts, the weight of evidence against Stephen remained overwhelming. A striking aspect of the trial was the moving testimony of Lauren's family, who bravely spoke about the impact of this loss on their lives. They described Lauren as a brilliant young woman, full of life, and spoke of the irreparable pain caused by her brutal disappearance. The defense also tried to present Stephen in a more human light, mentioning his social difficulties, his isolation, and even alleged psychological disorders. But that was not enough to lessen the seriousness of his actions. As the hearings went on, the tension rose, culminating in the closing arguments where each side appealed to both the emotions and reason of the jurors. Finally, the verdict was delivered. Stephen McDaniel was found guilty of the murder of Lauren Giddings, as well as related charges connected to child exploitation. In light of this conviction, the question of sentencing became a pressing issue. The prosecutor demanded the harshest possible sentence, citing the brutality of the crime and the need for exemplary justice. But Lauren's family, and Lauren herself in particular, had always opposed the death penalty, expressing a deep wish for Stephen to live out his days in prison, away from society, to reflect on his actions. The judge followed this recommendation and handed down a life sentence, with no possibility of release for several decades. This decision was met with a mix of relief and emotion, marking the end of a long legal battle. For Stephen, this sentence meant a total loss of freedom, a definitive end to any chance of redemption within society. For Lauren's family and loved ones, it was a step toward peace, even though the pain of their loss remained unchanged. The trial and the sentence sent a clear message. Justice, even though it can never truly repair such a tragedy, must protect society and honor the memory of the victims. This chapter of the Stephen McDaniel case thus came to a close, but its echo would continue to resonate in the community for a long time. After the verdict and the sentence, Lauren Giddings' story did not end. Her memory became a powerful symbol for her family, her friends, and the entire community that followed this heartbreaking case. Every year, her loved ones organize events in her honor. Races, gatherings, and silent ceremonies are held to celebrate her life and to ensure that the person she was is never forgotten. A brilliant, generous young woman, full of promise. Lauren was not simply a victim. She was a passionate law student, a loving sister, a loyal friend. Her family made sure that her name would live on, not through the tragedy, but through the memory of her personality and her dreams. Her sister Caitlin, for example, gave her own daughter the name Lauren Magnolia, a touching tribute that shows just how deeply this loss remains in their hearts. Commemorative plaques have been installed in places that were important to Lauren, such as the law school where she studied and in parks she enjoyed. These plaques serve as a reminder to the community: never forget, always respect life, and remain vigilant against violence that can arise even in the safest places. On the justice side, despite Stephen McDaniel's conviction, questions remain. Investigators continue to search for the rest of Lauren's body, hoping to offer some closure to her family. The legal battle is not over either. Stephen has filed numerous appeals and petitions, seeking to challenge his conviction. But so far, his attempts have been rejected. Justice stands firm, protecting Lauren's memory and ensuring that her killer remains accountable for his actions. This case is a reminder of how vigilance, solidarity, and determination are essential in the fight against violence. Lauren has, despite herself, become a symbol of this struggle. The lessons learned from this case highlight the need to support victims, to strengthen safety within communities, but also to never trivialize concerning behaviors. For those listening to this story today, it is a call for caution, but above all for kindness, because in a sometimes cruel world, it is compassion and mutual support that can save lives. In the end, even though the pain of loss never truly goes away, Lauren's memory inspires us to continue this fight for a safer world. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to discover more powerful stories, and to share this video so that Lauren's voice continues to be heard. Lauren Giddings' story reminds us just how fragile and unpredictable life can be. Behind every face lies a story often more complex than we imagine. Through her courage and her memory, Lauren teaches us the importance of staying vigilant, supporting one another, and never turning a blind eye to troubling signs around us. Justice has been served, but the pain remains. This story is also a call for kindness and caution because every life matters. If this video moved you or taught you something, I invite you to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. Share this video so that Lauren's story continues to be heard. And above all, never forget, a simple act of kindness can make all the difference in someone's life. Thank you for listening to me. See you very soon for a new story.